Hey ho, I'm called Alaric and I have the remarkable privilege of teaching the Modern Icelandic first year elective at the University of Leeds. And I just want to talk to you a little bit about why you might want to do that elective, really. And it might be good to start with why you'd want to do an elective at all. And actually, Icelandic is in some ways a fantastic example of what kind of elective you might want to do and why you might want to do it. Because these first year electives are us forcing you to come to university and do something that you've never done before, or to at least kind of keep up some interests that you've not otherwise had a chance to keep up. But, you know, something I love about teaching Icelandic is that you can bet your bottom dollar that no one in the class will have studied it before. So you get to come to university, you've got this amazing range of new stuff, and you can just choose something really random and special and different. And Icelandic just fits that bill beautifully. And for me, it's really exciting to not only get to communicate what I know and have studied about this culture, but also to kind of introduce first years to a whole new kind of world of learning and experience at Leeds University. So we should think a little bit about what you actually do on this module. It's divided into two halves. One half is actually learning Icelandic. We'll come back to that in a minute. And the other half is learning about Icelandic culture through kind of literature, film and music, and doing kind of cultural studies. So let's just think a bit about the language bit first. You're probably British, given that you're watching this and Leeds is in Britain, and you might therefore be thinking, oh no, I can't learn language at all, I'm rubbish at learning languages, because all British people think this. But in fact, we're no more rubbish at learning languages than anyone else on the planet. We've just got a crap education system. And often too few incentives to actually bother as well. So you're in fact amazing at learning languages, you just don't know it. And I just love bringing all these people onto this module, and we get to kind of experiment with learning Icelandic and working together to do it. And everyone's kind of in the same boat because no one's ever done it before. And it's just a really exciting opportunity for you to not only learn some Icelandic, but also to kind of have a second bite at the cherry of learning a language at all and sort of finding new ways to do it in a new context. But just to give you some sense of how we go about this, and some sense that you can learn Icelandic, let's learn the word for I in Icelandic, which is yay. Yay. It's got a kind of at the end, but basically just yay. And so that's I in Icelandic. And if you want to say am in Icelandic, the word for am is er. And it's got this funny at the end, which makes you sound like a purring cat. But if you can't do it, or can't do it yet, don't worry. You know, it'll come, or you can just go air or something. I don't mind really. So, ég I am. Ég Alaric. Ég Alaric. And you can probably say to me now who you are. You can do your first Icelandic sentence. So hopefully that worked, okay? Ég Alaric. And then if you want to say a slightly bigger sentence in Icelandic, you can put in this little word as, which has got a and th, like in breathe on it, as, little word, and then you can put a verb. And what this little word as does is to say, I'm going to be a sentence that says, I am doing something, I am somethinging. Okay, so I could say, ég að syngja. Ég að syngja, which means I am singing. Or I could say, ég að læra, and læra means to learn. So ég að læra, I am learning. Or there are lots of other verbs in Icelandic that you'll find you recognise, like standa, to stand, or sitja, to sit. Ég að sitja, ég að standa, ég að tala, which is speak, but it's related to the word tell. So there are lots of words that you kind of know in Icelandic, and pretty soon you can put together some quite fun sentences. Okay, so that's some sort of Icelandic learning and just a little bit of a sense of how we go about it. It's very kind of informal, it's a low risk enterprise, as indeed is the whole elective, and there's just, you know, lots of opportunity for having fun with people saying weird sentences about what you're doing. So that's the language side, and then let's think a little bit about the culture side as well, what we do on that part of the module. Well, there we're kind of looking at texts in translation or films with subtitles, so you don't actually have to know like loads of Icelandic to deal with them, but obviously it can help a little bit if you do. The precise texts that we do vary from year to year. It kind of depends on what's available in translation, what's in print, what I think is exciting at the moment. yeah, just what's going on in the artistic scene in Reykjavik and elsewhere in Iceland. Yeah, no specific promises, but we pretty much always do something by Halldór Laxness, Iceland's only Nobel Prize winner, and they're very excited about him. And it's fair enough that they are, actually, because he was an amazing novelist, mid-20th century novelist, really interesting experimentation, fantastic ideas and prose style. Partly thinking through Iceland's gaining of independence in 1944 from Denmark and thinking about what that moment meant for Icelandic culture. We often do something by Hallgrímur Helgason, who's a writer who's still writing at the moment, sort of flourishing really, and he's very good at writing kind of nasty, postmodern, very clever literature. It's often about gender and masculinity and the kind of crisis of masculinity here in the 21st century. You can still enjoy it if you're a woman, but don't get me wrong. But it's just really interesting as a sort of way to get into studying gender. We always look at some music, or listen to some music, I should say. And again, varies from year to year, but we normally do something by Björk Guðmundsdóttir, who you may know as Björk, and often something like Sigur Rós, another famous Icelandic band. And some film as well, fantastic short films, so we always look at some short films, maybe a longer movie as well. Sometimes Baltasar Kormakur, who is an Icelandic filmmaker. So this is the kind of material we look at, and the kinds of questions that we're trying to get at through that material are things like, how do Icelanders kind of feel Icelandic? How do they do nationhood? How did Icelandic nationalism kind of function in the 20th century, and what effect is it still having now? How do Icelandic elites convince the people whom they're oppressing that the oppression of those people is in those people's best interests, which is kind of what elites are always trying to think through, whether they notice it or not. And conversely, how do people resist that pressure from elites? How do they kind of find other narratives and other ways of thinking about their culture? Icelandic culture traditionally is very patriarchal, quite homophobic, yet in recent years Reykjavik has managed to market itself very successfully as a kind of mecca for gay pride. Iceland has achieved some of the best gender equality statistics in the world. So how do these kind of traditional and innovative cultures collide? And how do kind of writers and filmmakers push change or kind of try to resist change? How do they articulate what's going on in Icelandic society? The environment, always important. The 2008 financial crisis, which rocked the Icelandic soul as much as it did the Icelandic economy. These are all things that we get to think about through these texts. And by doing that, it's a fantastic opportunity to kind of get your head around how cultural studies works in general, how you can use novels, film, music, or whatever, to think about the culture that you live in, to think about the oppressions and the resistances and the struggles in your culture or other cultures around the world. And Iceland's a great place to do that, because you get kind of all these different things all happening in just one small place. So it's relatively easy to get your head around. I hope that's convinced you well, at least it's told you a little bit about what electives are for, even if you don't do Icelandic. But I hope it's convinced you that you can do some modern language learning, even if you're scared of it. I hope it's convinced you that Iceland's an interesting place to come to kind of get your head around some of the kind of problems and challenges that the world is facing. And I really hope that I get to work with you. Thanks very much.